ready? All right. On behalf of the PTO and Parent Council, I welcome you to the Meet the Candidates Forum. I am the current president of the TCGIS Parent Teacher Organization. I will kick things off by introducing you to the purpose and scope of this evening's event, and then turn it over to Parent Council Representative Kelly Loudon, who will be serving as moderator for the forum. This evening, you will be hearing from 3 candidates running for the school board. Minnesota state statute requires there to be at least 1 teacher, 1 parent, and 1 community member on the school board. The TCGIS board is a parent majority board mandating at least 6 parent members with 2 TCGIS teacher members, 2 community members, and 1 open spot comprising of its 11 seats. Our current board is made up of 2 TCGIS teachers, 7 parents, and 2 community members. We have a number of changes occurring on our board at the close of this school year. 2 board members are completing their terms of service. 1 parent member, Megan Dayton, and 1 community member, Silka Mola, will serve our school well, have served our school well for the past 3 years on the board, and we are grateful for their years of service and amazing contributions to the school community. 1 current parent member, Lori Hartman, whose term runs until June 2024, is transitioning from being a parent member to a community member. Her son graduates this year from TCGIS. Lucky for us, she is willing to continue serving on the board even after her son graduates as a community member. Finally, we have 1 teacher member, Emily Albers, who has served for 1 3-year term and is running to serve a 2nd term. Based on these changes, the school community will have 3 board positions to fill with this election. All elected board members will serve a 3-year term ending in June 2026 and commit to attending monthly executive committee meetings, 2 additional committee meetings, and the board meeting. Board members volunteer approximately 10 to 12 hours a month, including meeting preparation and committee project work. Elections will be held through a secure online platform May 8th through the 12th, 2023, and details for online voting will be sent to all eligible voters.
Thanks, Candace. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly Loudon. I'm a representative on the Parent Council, and I'd like to welcome you all to the forum tonight. We'll start our meeting as we do with at TCGIS in focusing or grounding ourselves on our mission, vision, and also for the first time at this forum, reading our new land acknowledgement, which the board approved at the April board meeting. TCGIS's mission is innovative education of the whole child through German immersion. Our vision is andere hören, andere sehen, weltoffen denken und handeln. In English, that's educating multilingual world citizens who listen to others, see others, and think and act with an open mind. Our TCGIS learning environment values curiosity, kindness, challenge and support, community, and intercultural engagement. We acknowledge and appreciate that TCGIS is located on Wapekute Dakota traditional, ancestral, and contemporary homeland, near Lake Metawaska in the land now known as Minnesota Makache. Our presence here is linked to generations of Wapekute stewardship over their land, as well as to the historical and ongoing injustices of settler colonization that impact Indigenous people to the present day. We at TCGIS are committed to understanding our role in this legacy and to educating ourselves and our community about Indigenous history through continued mindfulness and engagement in and outside the classroom. The structure for this evening's forum will be question and answer, and each candidate will be answering each of the questions and have an opportunity to weigh in. I'd like to start with an introduction of our 3 candidates. Emily Albers, who is an incumbent member of the board and a teacher at TCGIS. Lindsay Smeka, who's a parent at TCGIS. And Abner Yemenev, a parent at TCGIS. I'd like to ask each of you to briefly introduce yourself and share particular skills or experiences that you would bring to the board. Why would you like to be on the board? Emily, we'll start with you.
Yeah, like she said, my name is Emily Albers, and I am an incumbent teacher board member thus far. I am also a 3rd grade English teacher and 5th grade English and math teacher, and I've actually served on the board for 4 years with 1 appointment as well. I've been the governance chair for the past 3 years, and this is my first year as the vice chair of the school board as well. I think I bring a lot of experience thus far to the board, and I have for the past 4 years. This has been a time for me to provide insight, not as a member of the staff speaking for staff, but with the experience of staff to understand the teacher perspective when we're looking at different issues. And I'd like to run again because I think that that voice is very important, and it's definitely beneficial for as many teachers to be on the board as we can possibly have in accordance with our structure.
Lindsay?
My name is Lindsay Smaka. I have 2 children here at the school, a 7th grader and 5th grader, Adriana and Luca. And we have been at TCGIS since Adriana was in kindergarten, so we have been around a long time. My personal background, I'm a high school chemistry teacher. We live in St. Paul, but I work in Edina, so I commute over. And I also run the Global Scholar Program at Edina High School. So that's kind of where my global education tie comes in. My education, I have a chemistry degree along with a German studies degree. So I was fluent to German at one point. It has gone away a little bit, but speaking with my own children, it is starting to come back, which is really fun. And I'm currently a PhD student in international education as well. So between all of those things, my German background, my teaching background, as well as what I'm currently studying in school, I think I could be of benefit to the board and hopefully bring some perspectives. Like Emily said, I want to bring teacher perspectives. I know I can't speak for TCGIS teachers, but I can speak for kind of teachers as a whole, and as well as see what, especially at the middle school level, what we need to prepare them for once they enter high school, which comes very quickly, right? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Abner, and I was never fluent in German, but I have tried a few times. I am a parent of a kindergartner, a 6th grader, and a TCGIS graduate. Our family has been with TCGIS since 2013, when it was the first year in this building. And so I've seen it go through all the different stages, elementary school, middle school, and now we're starting over in middle school or elementary school with our kindergartner. And so I had in the past written up 2 applications and just never submitted them. So this year it was time to do it. And so thank you for those of you who nudged me to do it. I'm excited. The reason I wanted to run is because as a longtime family in the community, I wanted to at least share our experience and influence on things that worked well, things that haven't worked well, and make sure that strategically the school is going in the right direction. A bit of my background: by education, I am an engineer. I went to the University of Minnesota, and for work, I lead development programs at an aerospace company locally here. I look forward to bringing my experience and contributing to the mission of TCGIS. So thank you for having me.
So it's grateful to have each of you guys signing up for this. We appreciate it. How do you define success for students at TCGIS? What are some formal or informal measures of success? And Lindsay, let's start with you.
Sure. So for success, I look to the whole child, which is part of our mission. So along with test scores, which are important, I also look to things that aren't necessarily present on grades. Are they happy? Are they healthy physically, mentally? Are they socializing well? And all of that is pretty subjective, but I think if this child is happy, then that will reflect in their grades and the best possible grades that they can get. With TCGIS in particular, I also look to the language skills, and not necessarily acing every single German test they have, but developing and progressing in the German language, since that is one of our main focuses at TCGIS. I'm a strong advocate for learning languages. As a science teacher, I know it is really great for your brain health, as well as the intercultural skills that come with it. So looking to those German language skills and are they progressing? And then the intercultural communication too. Are they able to speak with people who are different from them, or even within our own community, we have a lot of different students and families as well. Are they able to get along with other students as well?
Abner?
Success. So when I was answering this question, I thought of why did we choose TCGIS and why do most families choose the school? We immediately look for test scores when you're looking for a school for your child. So we cannot lose focus of that. I think it's important. I think it's what attracts students. It's what will keep our waiting list healthy and our student retention healthy going forward. So with that, right, test scores are important, student retention is important, teacher retention is important, and all that is, I think, part of success for students. Also, DSD test results, I think, are important because it's a German school. Our mission is teaching German, right? So not losing value of that, I think, is important. And then informally, belonging, ability for the kids to be themselves. I heard a term, can't remember where it was, but they should have windows into new experiences and new things to learn, but then they should also have opportunities to have mirrors to see themselves in things and stories that are told. Can't remember where I heard that, but I wish I can give the person credit, but I thought it was excellent. And then excellent relationship with staff and teachers. And then lastly, parent and community engagement. I think that's important, and that shows, engagement shows that the child and their children is having success at the school and they feel part of the community. So strong engagement from the community, I think, is also important.
I always forget how this works and how we all feel that way when we're the last on the question, and I think we'll be good on the board together because we've got some similar ideas. As I was looking at this for students, I think, you know, you initially, yeah, you look at test scores, you're thinking, okay, how are they, you know, succeeding academically or even emotionally or behaviorally in some ways that, you know, we're trying to measure and grow into these humans. And yet, you know, the whole child, our mission truly, like you said, is very much what we try to focus on and want to focus on. And I think that's one of the more formal ways in some ways, even though it's not necessarily measured. One of the more formal is just because it is something that we talk about at every meeting. In my undergrad studies, there was an acronym, BREW, that every time I think of, you know, some of the things in our atrium, becoming responsibly engaged in the world, that's where that whole child is coming in. And that's always something that kind of keeps me in the focus of how are we defining the success? Are they, you know, academically performing, but also are we having good retention rates? Are the students buying in? By middle school, are they joining some of our clubs and our teams? Are they a part of clubs or teams, even if they're in the elementary school, which is, you know, growing in the last few years? And seeing how they're defining their own success is part of that more informal measure as well, to say, okay, they found who they are and they're ready to move on to that next step, which is, you know, high school, and feeling successful for that transition as well after being here for a potential of 9 years.
What are 2 or 3 opportunities that you think should be priorities for the board in the short term? And how do you see the board addressing those in an effective way? Abner?
So I'm going to read my statement here because I thought a lot about this. First priority, and I debated whether this should be first or second, but in the end I chose it first. Solving the teacher retention challenge should be a top priority. I have not seen any data that I'm privy to, but just every year it seems like we lose teachers. And so I may be wrong without seeing the data, but I feel like that's a big problem that is facing the board and the school at large. Having good teacher retention will lead to stability year over year for our students, allow for more looping opportunities in the earlier grades, long-term teacher and curriculum development, less financial strain onboarding new teachers, which can in turn be utilized to increase teacher salaries or investment in tools for for the students to, have more opportunities to learn. And then the higher teacher retention will also pay a dividend when having to recruit, additional teachers, because a happy workforce organically will attract more teachers. And so I think that's key. The second part of your question, how could they address it? I think the board could address it by looking at what is driving teachers to leave the school in both a preventative, and meaning ensuring teachers feel heard, addressing their concerns, doing stay interviews, providing tools and resources. And by the way, I'm stealing all of these from my job, so I can come up with this. But it's a best practice, right? And that's what we should do as much as possible. And lessons learned, right? Utilizing exit interview data, addressing the top reasons teachers are leaving, etc. Once we learn what is done, right, if appropriate, I'll be happy to share some of those best practices, and I'm sure there's others within the community that have seen them, but I think that's key. And then second in priority, and I almost made this first, but I think it will make sense when I explain it. Ensuring the financial health of the school, I think, is also critical. After giving this thought, right, this became second because a school that is financially healthy but is struggling recruiting and retaining teachers will end up losing students and become financially unhealthy anyway, right? And or unsustainable over time. So I think we need to figure out, and again, I haven't been here when you guys have done this, so not saying you haven't done it, but as a board, review the annual budget and the school and make difficult decisions and budget adjustments where appropriate to ensure we make the school or we keep the school an attractive choice for families.
Emily?
So this idea of short-term was really weighing on me because I feel like some of the things that I thought of initially were things that could be short and long-term. And so I think within that is definitely retention of both teachers and students. And that to me is hand in hand with the ideas of other things that can happen in our school. If we're losing teachers, then are we losing students in, in succession to that? Or vice versa too, as well. If students are leaving, then teachers are feeling less invested into the fact that their students have gone through their class. And I think that addressing these is something that we're currently trying to work on in figuring out how the board can have that kind of oversight without stepping into the role of management too heavily. And that's a very difficult balance when you're trying to provide as many resources as I think our staff does need. And our students need to, especially after the pandemic and the things that our students are facing, which, has been a topic that I think we've somewhat beat into the ground, but it's the truth is that we are not fully back in the normal way of doing school and life. And there's been a glitch in where they had a lot of time on technology and all the things that have kind of happened. And so how do we help them get back to a point of feeling successful, as well as helping our teachers manage that struggle that our students are having? And I think it just takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of listening. And that's the biggest thing for me, is listening and just hearing why these things are happening, and then what can we do and what do we have the possibilities to do, because there is a budget issue and those things can really point into each other, but finding the ways to be strict with the budget so we can then eventually bring in addition resources and more students is going to help us a lot. And I think having just the idea of being in those roles of stability, both in our org chart and feeling as an oversight governance board, is going to help us instead of having to manage things and putting our focus on things that are not as big picture as I think we've had to do because of the pandemic in the last few years. So I think those are things that we can then address by, ensuring that our administrators have the things that they need as well to feel comfortable in their jobs and be successful to manage the school.
Yeah, Emily are very close. So yeah, my main priority would be teacher retention as well. And as you said, I think society, we are at the point where COVID's over, we're good, we're skating through, but that is not true. And I think a lot of people are really afraid to address that and fess up to that and say, we are still in the thick of it. We are over the main hump that we could see visually, but I just read, a study that came out that it's going to be at least 5 years for students to come back and make up both academically and socially and mentally what they lost during those 2 to 3 years, especially the 2 years. And I know firsthand, it's really hard on teachers. Last year was my hardest year, even though we were fully back in person. But the expectation and the pressure that's put on teachers was a lot. And I can't speak for TCGIS teachers, but I think as a whole, throughout the country, that's what was happening, of everything needs to go back exactly how it was before, and we need status quo. And at the end of the day, our world is not the same, and education is not the same, and things are changing as a result of the pandemic, and we need to realize that and kind of use it to our advantage, that we can kind of reinvent the wheel and take this opportunity to create something that is beneficial for both bringing the kids back to where they should be, as well as closing that equity gap that we saw blindly during the pandemic. So that all stems back to, teacher support. We need to listen to them, as you said, just be an open ear. Again, I can't speak for the TCGIS teachers, but listen to them, what they need, whether they need support or training, or, I mean, I just got a back massage at school today. It was great, even like little stuff like that. So yeah, that's my first priority. And then second priority, I think because I have a middle schooler, I see it firsthand, is what they're exposed to online in this digital age, and what I'm seeing at the high school they're exposed to online in this digital age. And I think it would be great if we could prepare them in their middle school years for what they will be exposed to. I just saw a speaker from a group called Act United, which deals with sex trafficking, and I mean, there's stories of 5th graders who get roped into this. And so I think bringing awareness to our middle school kids around bullying and what they could be exposed to online, and help prepare them for when they grow.
All right, I'd like for each to identify a current challenge facing the board and the school, and describe what you see the board and the school can do to tackle this challenge, and what would be the end goal. And let's start with you, Lindsay.
So current challenge, I think, is, I'm not as familiar with the TCGIS, what's currently challenging the board. However, what I think what's currently challenging schools is the sense of safety right now. Every other day we see in the news, gun violence, and I mean, we just had a carjacking close to our school. And so, whether that is actually happening or whether it's the fear that's there. So I think that's a challenge, is creating a community, working with the city, working with the police, working with the neighborhood and the students and staff, of how we can either prevent this or make us feel more at ease as a school, and just try to be safe here.
What do you want from this?
Sure. It's kind of two pieces that are kind of put together. So a challenge that I see is the communication and community that kind of pushes together. It's no secret that there have been miscommunication times through this year, last year, and the flow of information that our families receive can be quite heavy, and that's not necessarily always coming from the board. However, a lot of the things that are coming up as challenges for our community are things that the board is focused on or has had their hand in at some point or another, whether it's a policy, thinking of the wellness policy, or things that are surrounding any kind of decision that we're making as a board. That's been something that, how are we getting that communication out to the community in an effective way without bombarding people with messages or so much information that they don't remember it or things like that, but yet also feeling like we have that open communication, which does require quite a bit of content sometimes. And I think then from there, understanding where the community is feeling out these different topics or issues. Where are we in terms of, say, the wellness policy? And why, you know, are there massive amounts of people that are wanting to see change with certain aspects of that? Or are we looking at, you know, a select few that need to have their voices heard as well? And then what's the route that we're going to take? And it, you know, comes down to the fact that we have to make the best decision for the school as a whole. And looking at, you know, Crumpus, for example, was one that was then brought to parent council to talk about as well. And so using the channels that are appropriate as well, to really drive in the fact that we are a community that truly cares about everything that is set forth in front of us. And yet how are we communicating that properly and through the correct channels?
Current challenge facing the board in the school.
I don't know if this is facing them. So on this question, it felt kind of like a repeat of the previous one. So I wasn't sure how to answer it, but thinking about kind of what's facing the school. Talking to school members, parents, other teachers. It seems like teachers need help in managing their classrooms in terms of discipline. It seems like there needs to be more consequences. There needs to be more clear cut, bigger, figuratively to say, not actual sticks, but bigger sticks they can use to help manage. And I've seen it last year with one of my children that graduated, and then with those that are here now. It seems like there's not a clear cut way of, you know, you get yellow sheet, green sheet, but then what's more, right? And you don't immediately need to go to like something severe, but is there ways that teachers can have more tools to help them manage their classroom so they don't spend time correcting children's behavior and more time on education? Again, I don't know if this is a huge problem because this is just based on information that I got, but developing some kind of guidelines that can be used to address this, I think will be beneficial to our teachers, and utilizing best practices from community members. We have a lot of teachers that are parents also that could tell us what other schools are doing. But I think that could be something that we can address as or make recommendations as a board to the school to help teachers manage and make it easier on them. Not that they don't do a good job of managing. I look at the teachers as the only non-teacher.
All right, let's move to the budget and to our financial well-being as a school. One of the challenges the school has continually faced is having sufficient funds to deliver the educational experiences we want for our students consistent with our mission, vision, and values. Can you describe your leadership experiences that you've had managing an organizational budget and ways in which you envision being able to support the school in achieving its financial objectives? Emily, let's start with you.
Yeah. So in my educational background, math and numbers have been part of my training, and yet think more fifth grade level or binary code. Organizational budgets are not necessarily the purview or education that I've grown up with. However, being on the board in the last 4 years, you know, one of the required courses that we have to take as board members is the 200 level financial course, which is a really great overview. And I was completely and utterly confused and lost when I took it, because understanding that is a beast in and of itself. And so I think one of the things that I've had to recognize as a board member is that that is not my strength. I am not out to to take Richard's position, Director Hyde's position of being the treasurer on our board. However, one of the things that I've been able to do is to gain familiarity with our budget specifically for our school and where we are seemingly having issues, where we can cut things. And, you know, going back to our mission, I think innovative education of the whole child, the innovative education is something that we can all model to children, speaking as a teacher and modeling things that they don't understand. And I think watching our finance committee go through things and sitting through it, as tricky as it can be for someone who doesn't have that lens, it's been something that I've tried to get to some of the meetings to understand why are we in this situation. And then listening during our other meetings to really push into the idea of, okay, now that I have kind of a basic understanding, what is the way that we're going to do this and what innovative ways do we need to be thinking? We've gone through things as a board of just, questioning all sorts of things, and that comes down to a staff level, to a kid level, like where are we finding different ways to either add money or to decrease what we're spending thus far. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is just learning as you go in some ways, because this is something that not all of us are perfect at, and that's where we have to just make sure that we're doing our due diligence on it and making sure that we then are providing ideas to understand that insight.
So managing budgets, in my job, managing programs, managing budgets is a large part of it. And the way I would look at it in this kind of environment is, how do you make priority calls on what's important and what is not? No, let me start over. How do you make priority calls amongst choices that are all important, right? There's nothing that's not technically important, but how do you make that priority call? Who are the stakeholders? And address it in a way where you do the least, maybe damage is not the right word, but the least amount of damage in cutting something, and understanding, yeah, we cut this, but the benefit is here, and here's that benefit, and we need to show our community and the school that. Those are all super hard decisions, but it's something that we've done before. I mean, in my world, it's people losing their jobs, so it's difficult as well. And unfortunately, right, sometimes you have to make those decisions. The other part of it is, in our allocated budgets, really looking at, are we within those budgets? Can we be more efficient? And instead of cutting it, is something that's costing, X dollars, could we figure out ways to do it more efficiently and save money so we can invest in areas maybe that are underfunded, or an area that maybe was cut the year before? And doing that review and being really strict on that, I think, will be key in identifying ways to utilize our budget a little bit more effectively maybe than we are today. Also look back and look at our expenditures and our budget and understand, are we getting a return on investment in some of the areas we have in the budget? Initially, I know we made decisions at a school to add certain things because there was going to be return on investment, mainly more students. If that hasn't materialized, let's not keep spending that money and redirect it somewhere else, because there's areas that could use it. And I think I would point to increasing teacher salaries, I think, again, because teacher retention is key. Without the teachers, we have nothing, right? And so that's the way, at least I would influence the budget decisions.
And for me, in my position, I do have a budget that I manage for our Global Scholar Program. It's teeny tiny. So I've learned to get very creative. And yeah, kind of use the resources I have within my own community to fill gaps that I might have due to lack of budget. So I think that's one thing that we could do, is really look to our community and see what help and what resources we can get. I think the other major thing is advocating for equitable student funding, because it just still blows my mind to this day that we do not get the same amount per child as a normal school does. And I don't think any charter school deserves that. So that would be, I will advocate all day long, because that, at the end of the day, I think is where most of the money needs to come from.
Let's talk about diversity and our school's commitment to diversity and inclusion and belonging. What should the school do to expand the diversity of students and staff at TCGIS within the parameters of charter school enrollment policies and law? Abner, let's start with you.
It goes back to what attracts diverse student body. As a diverse member of the community, and I don't think it's anything different than the non-diverse part of the community. We all go back to a good, healthy school with good test scores, right? Test scores get you to look up to school. If the test scores are good, then people look at everything else, right? If the test scores are bad, next school. It's pretty much what it is. And with charter schools, we don't just have, you know, just send my kid to a local community school. It's people choose to come here. And so we have to almost market and sell ourselves. And our selling point is our test scores. Once that's healthy, and I think the teacher retention is going to be a key part of that, then how do you address the other aspects? Then we would work with our community members to identify and market our school within their respective communities. You know, we have worked with you in the past where we've made videos, we've recruited other families here, and if there's a good school, the families and the teachers and the community will evangelize, and you will have your diverse student body. I think focusing at that with everything else not being left behind, it's a lost cause. And it's my opinion, but I think it goes back to, again, people of color are not looking for anything different than non-people of color, right? Test scores bring them to the door. Once they're here, how do you retain them? How do you engage them? And that goes back to a lot of things the school's already doing in identifying ways to having the kids see themselves in the staff, see themselves in the books, see themselves in the stories. If the school is healthy and we evangelize it, you can attract teachers that are also people of color. And I think, so it goes back to, I guess, our main point, right? The school sells education. That's what we got to focus on. If that's good, I think we will get we'll get the applications from the families that are from the diverse community that we're trying to attract.
So yeah, like what you said, students are drawn to or learn really well from people who they can see themselves in, right? So I think at the heart of it, diversifying the staff would be awesome. I mean, I know there's programs in the Twin Cities, like Black Men Teach Twin Cities, where that recruit Black men and get them into the profession and provide opportunities for them. And we have that added complexity with the language, right? So trying to get creative with both that program and the language. Can we get into programs like that? And then they can maybe recruit from even the college level. So I think that will help diversify the students as well. Another thing we can do, which I know is a hard subject, is transportation. That's one thing that can be a really sticking point for parents of whether they choose to come here or not, is can my kid get to school or not if I'm working, 7 a.m. to whatever, and I have no option of dropping them off. Is there a busing option? Is there a childcare option? So somehow trying to find a way to either expand the busing or make it really intentional of where we put the bus stops in the Twin Cities area to ensure that we can target that diverse population as well. And then continue, doing the things that we're doing of being open and welcoming. And the land acknowledgement edition is a really cool thing that the school has done. So keep working on that type of stuff too.
Yeah, I think, from a board lens, we have a diversity and belonging group. And I think that group has made strides in trying to figure out what are the priorities in a, sea again, of, like Abner said, of things that are all important. And so one of the things that I'm able to do as a board member currently is to have not only my committee, but across committees look at policies and make sure, are they inclusive? Are we thinking of the idea of expanding and making sure that our policies reflect the diversity and belonging that we're striving to get to? And I think that in addition to that, it's important to recognize the work that we've done so far, which is been, on all levels, from curriculum with staff and teachers to, the administration working on things and support staff sending out communications. Our calendar has been something that has been great in addition to the land acknowledgement. And recognizing those things that we have worked on, and yet recognizing still that we have so many more steps to go. And that includes the transportation, and again, seeing windows and mirrors are so important, and we talk about that as staff all the time, working with the Maze Works to have, books where I've been able to read books to my students this year about Layla's Lunchbox, which is a story about Ramadan, and talking about things during Black History Month and during Asian American Pacific Islander Month, those types of curriculum ideas, so our students do feel that inclusivity in their work and in the days that they spend here. And then again, being able to then reach that out further with our social media posts that we have and things that are seen across the Twin Cities, and making a name for ourselves in what we have been able to accomplish, but also recognizing we have so much more to do.
Let's turn now to the working of the board itself. We've talked a lot about school priorities. From your perspective, the board is responsible for oversight of the school. And from your perspective, what are the characteristics of an effective school board? Abner, let's start with you.
The school board should work on the strategy. What is the 5-year goal? What is financially, where do we want our budget to be in 5 years? And how do we align the goals to meet our budgetary goals? How do we develop quality instruction and give the school and the teachers enough tools and resources to be able to achieve the student achievement? How do we address staff issues like retention and both teacher retention and family retention? How do we drive engagement from the community? I think the PTO and the board do a good job today. How do we increase it? What are our values? And again, these are things you guys are already doing, so I'm not probably saying anything new. But also a good working relationship between the board members or the board itself and the school leadership and staff. Are our goals aligned? Do they feel free to share feedback on things that the school is having issues with? Or is it a little bit more distance, right? So how do we improve that relationship so that we're made aware as a board of things that are going on within the school, within the community that we may not be aware of? And then where does the school need help, right? Whether it's identifying those holes and coming up with ideas along with the PTO, along with the community at large, along with the teachers, to be able to address some of those challenges that the school may be facing.
And the distinct honor of being the governance chair, and within that is the onboarding process. And one of the things we talk about is that we are governance and not management. And I've mentioned it earlier tonight as well. But an effective school board is focused on the governing parts of the school, looking at the big picture things, whereas we are the ones as a board collectively hiring the executive director to then manage the rest of it. I talk a lot about policy and the difference between policy and procedure within a school. We are as a committee creating or updating things like that. We're working on creating the policy, but then it's being enacted by the administration to really, policy 305 is implementing policy. So how are they implementing that policy to create procedures concerning discipline, concerning other day-to-day functions? And yet with an effective school board, we should be in the know, like Abner was saying as well. Understanding what is the day-to-day, are we having that relationship too of being honest, and is there trust between not only the school board and the administration that are supposed to work so closely within that governance versus management, but also with the community. And if that trust is, lessening, how do we get it back? What do we work on? What are we supposed to be aiming toward, so that we are all looking toward that goal of the future and making sure that we are headed in the direction that, our school board, but also our administration are hoping we are aiming toward. And that's, reflected in the Vision 2025. And, that is a live document that we get to work with every year to really just say, okay, is it possible to work with this goal, or has the pandemic made it harder? And adjust those things so that we can keep on with the same vision, but also recognize the challenges we've had in the last few years specifically.
I'll echo a lot of that. Yeah, just be clear that, or ensure that the board is not micromanaging what is happening in the school, and gaining the trust of administration and teachers to carry out the policies and carry out their job that they were hired to do. And within the board itself, having a clear-cut goal. It's always, if we don't have a defined goal, it's harder for us to understand what we are doing in that moment. Open, clear communication, creating a team, a lot of collaboration, and really highlighting everyone's strengths. I've seen 3 different strengths here today, as well as other strengths that are already in the board, and highlighting everyone's strengths and being open to new ideas and learning from each other.
In your past professional experience or board experience, what criteria do you use to make difficult decisions? And how will you use these criteria when making decisions as a school board member? Let's start with you, Emily.
As a teacher, you have to make difficult decisions all the time. And I think it's, innately different here with a curriculum that is solely or fully, at the discretion of the teacher. And what are they choosing to do within the state standard guidelines, of course, that we're, reporting back to, but also having the discretion to say, hey, my students aren't understanding something, let's take a little bit more time on it. And I think when making those decisions, they can be difficult because you might be sacrificing something else in that teacher role. And so, whether it's more of the I don't know, quote unquote fun days, so that the kids are making it fun, doing those types of things. And those aren't as difficult as the things that I've seen as a school board member, but those things that you work with as a teacher, they say that teachers make about 1,500 decisions a day. And they're not all, of course, tough, but I think when you make those decisions, you're thinking about what is best for my kids, what is best for my class, my students, what do they need to feel successful? And I think that translates very easily into making difficult decisions here. What is best for the school as a whole? Because there are times where I have, voted against my, fellow board members, and for different various reasons, but those reasons are all from the experience that I bring with, and then they are bringing theirs. And at the end of the day, we make that decision together and support it fully, so that we are going forward as one and saying, hey, this is our decision. This is what we believe, with all of the information that we have been presented with from stakeholders if necessary, or anyone else that might give us advice, whether it's legal advice or school running advice, like just management advice, getting all of that information, what is best for the school as a whole. And at the end of the day, there's always going to be people that don't like that decision, and you just have to stick by it and push through, knowing that you made the best decision at the time. And it may not seem like it 4 or 5 years down the road or whatever, but you gave it what you had, and knowing that you did everything you could with the information is going to make you feel okay about it.
Yeah, sorry. So in my role, I always have to center it back to the students. Yeah, what is best for the students, and whether it is making curriculum choices or structure of the day or whatever it is that we're doing, we always have to ground ourselves in what is best for the students. Now, perspective of what is best for the students changes from person to person, changes from administration to teachers, to parents, to the students themselves. So with that, we also have to look at all the perspectives and all of the stakeholders, including the students themselves, which sometimes they don't always know what's best for them. But they can be very creative and have awesome ideas. So I think hearing from the students as well is just as important. So, I mean, similar to what Emily was saying, taking all of those perspectives in mind, taking all of those stakeholders in mind, and really just going with your gut for what's best for the students.
So when making difficult decisions, right? So the first step I would look at is, what does the data say, right? What do the numbers say? What if it applies in this case, right? What is the actual situation based on the information that we can measure, we can study, we can look at? What is the feedback, whether we're looking at like exit interviews, etc. What does it actually say? Then engage the stakeholders, right? Does the data match what the stakeholders are feeling, right? It could be perception and the data set might be different, but perception is reality in a lot of cases. So understanding that perception, then working within those stakeholders and identifying the leaders within that stakeholder group, both the formal leaders and the informal leaders, to really hear and understand what that community of people that would be impacted by this change are feeling, or what their feedback is. Work with them, ask them, right? If we're talking about something, most likely the board is not going to be the expert on it. It's going to be people that are living it day to day. What is their recommendations of improvement? Because when you live it day to day, you probably have many ideas that you just set aside because you're so busy in your day job. What does that feedback look like? And then taking all that back, and then understanding, how does this impact that bigger picture? How does it align with our strategy, with the goals of the school, with the goals of the community? Then making the difficult decisions, and then circling back and using that same network you pulled all that information from to communicate back out why we made those decisions. I think a lot of times decisions get made for very good reasons, but the communication part is not there, and they get received wrong. People sometimes don't understand the bigger picture of what was on the table, and potentially not understand why a group or the board in this case made that decision, and it could be taken negatively. So using that same network you pull that data from to communicate back out to it. And key, right, it's the students are going to be the students, more likely their families, the PTO, each of the teacher, the classroom parent teachers, the teachers themselves, the administrators, and then the board members. And that stakeholder base, we're lucky because the school is small compared to, my daughter goes to Central, it's a big behemoth. And you know what I mean? So we're small, we're nimble, and we can change direction quickly, and we can influence or understand problems a lot quicker than something that big. So using that strength to an advantage to make decisions based on those criteria.
You mentioned strength of the school, or small size being one. Want to ask each of you, what do you see as a strength of TCGIS, and how can the board ensure that its strengths are fostered? Lindsay, let's start with you.
So overall, I think the biggest strength is the international aspect to it. The German language, the emphasis on intercultural education, I think is a huge strength because it's so unique. There's a few in the Twin Cities, but it's pretty unique to the country. So, everyone who I talk to and tell that my own kids go to a German immersion school, oh, cool, where is that? It has a special niche to it, which I think is great. So the language aspect to it, the fact that they can learn Spanish as well, the fact that they can have 3 languages coming out is just super incredible. How fast my own daughter has caught on to Spanish was really impressive. And not only that, but taking it a step further, not just German, not just Spanish, but fostering a bunch of other cultures as well, including the cultural fair, I forget what it's called, that's coming up next week, is super cool, bringing in adults from, I believe, Global Minnesota, from around the world to come and speak to the students in their classes. My son really wants to go to Japan now, ever since that happened. So I think fostering that and encouraging that is a super cool thing, because it is a cool niche, and it is a great and amazing opportunity for our own children to just become awesome global citizens and be curious and go into their high school career just realizing that the world is so much greater than just St. Paul.
Abner?
I second the part about the language. I've seen it, with my own family, with the kids at the school. Last time I checked, I don't know if it's still the case, but I think that this school is the biggest German school in the country. And I think that's something to be proud of, and I think that's a strength. I think the community is also a strength. We compared to other schools, we have a community of parents that actively, not passively, but actively chose the school. So we need to pull on that strength a little bit and keep that engagement alive, and maybe try to get a little bit more of our school community. And then the other strength, I think, is our size. The fact that we're small, the fact we're not part of a major district allows us to be nimble. We're like a startup, right? It's a lot easier for us to change direction if we don't see something that's not working. So let's make sure we do that. Let's make sure we are staying true to our mission and making course corrections as necessary if we start to veer off course. And then lastly, it's our teacher community. I think we have great teachers here, and that's why I put teacher retention again as #1, because every time we hear someone that used to teach my kid is leaving, it's like, oh my gosh, right? They become like family to you, and I think that's also something we need to focus on and focus on that teacher retention piece of it.
I initially was thinking the support of the community is something that really is a strength, because I think we do get the most from families that are choosing to come to the school. They want to know more about the school. They're asking to be involved. I've had colleagues tell me, oh my gosh, I needed marker refreshing in my room, and I received like an entire massive box from Amazon. You know, things, the willingness and the love to support our teachers is much higher than I think you would see at a different school. And I think also then the support for things surrounding the school, bringing in different groups for in-house field trip types of experiences that, you know, are starting to come back after the pandemic. Looking at all of these, you know, opportunities that we've tried to give our kids, and, you know, the support that we have because of, you know, other situations like busing that are out of control as far as as far as, you know, athletics go, for example, you know, the families are willing to carpool the kids out to make it to these events, to step up and be coaches, things like that. And I think that stakeholder buy-in is what keeps people really engaged and loving every aspect of the community here. Man, that's making it much more difficult to think. But I would also say that, you know, just the camaraderie too that comes from the school of creating events that you don't always see at other schools, whether that's between staff members or including, you know, outings. Our Sunshine Committee is amazing in terms of doing those types of things. And as well as the support we get from administrators and from the board. Last year, having extra time as a teacher to, you know, plan things and work on things and have a day without students being in the classroom so we could focus on getting things, you know, under control from a grading perspective or a planning perspective. I think the love and support that comes from the community for our staff also is what we can use to our advantage even more. So it's already a strength, and yet to push it even farther, to do what Abner's been saying, is to have that teacher retention as well, is right there in front of us, and something that we can use because it is something we have. So
You mentioned stakeholder engagement. Let's talk a little more about that. What role do you see for stakeholder engagement in our school? And how can the board best support administration in creating meaningful engagement across stakeholder groups? Emily, let's start with you.
Yeah. I think, one of the things that, I mentioned as kind of a challenge is the amount of communication that goes out. And I think we've seen that on a staff level, but also as a family level of how much are we communicating and what's the best way. And I think the Run Brief has done a great job of trying to put all of that into one location. And one of the things that I think we've tried to do as a board, but is to find avenues where people are willing to give their time. We've had subcommittees that have focused on, creating the exterior work that's been done on our playground, or the mural in the cafeteria. And we've had, things like that. And to have, certain strengths play out from different community members is super helpful in getting that engagement. And I think as a board, giving the administration opportunities to foster relationships with different families too is something that will help with that engagement, because the administration also knows where, we all as a school would potentially need support, whether it's in classrooms or volunteer positions or helping out or being a part of the day-to-day procedures here at school. Just encouraging everyone to find that one little piece of volunteering or helping out that they can in the way that kind of suits their strengths the best that they can.
Lindsay, what ideas do you have for stakeholder engagement?
Yeah, so creating space and not only creating the space, but creating creative space. Kind of like what you were talking about, playing to the strengths of each of the stakeholders, students, teachers, parents, community. I think the big one that's missing right now is the student stakeholder engagement. At least from my perspective, I mean, my kids don't tell me everything, but my kids didn't even know what the school board was when I told them I was running for school board. So having them have a voice in their education, even for them just to get their ideas out there, or looking to them of why are we having these behavior issues, if we can sit them down and have a conversation of what is going wrong, what from your perspective, why do you think this happened in class today? And not only just, we do not need to put this on the teachers because they have enough on their plates, but creating a space where they can talk to the school board members, talk to the PTO, talk to the community about the challenges right now that they're facing.
Stakeholder engagement, I was thinking about this, and there's many aspects to it, right? I agree with Emily, the communication sometimes can be overwhelming. The Rune Brief does a good job, but I'll give you an example. Something that I see in the Rune Brief, I'll read it in passing, I'll read it, and then I'll forget about it.
team at school, chemistry team. And puts 5 or 6 teachers together who are very passionate and love teaching and have all ideas. There are conflicts that arise. And I think the way to tackle it is to really try to take away the Minnesota nice and say what you're feeling and say what you think, without fear of hurting someone's feelings. And on the flip side as well, don't take it personally as well. So creating that community where you can be open and honest with each other with respect, and building that, again, building that community, I think needs to come on the front end in order for those really tough conversations to happen, and to happen thoughtfully, and for once the conflict is resolved, for us to go back and be that strong community again.
Abner?
For conflict resolution, I would approach it in a way where, making sure you really listen to what's driving what's the conflict's about, right? Having, we call it a crucial conversation, right? Ask the questions, try to take the emotion out of it, and really listen to the person or the people that are affected by the conflict and understand what's at the root cause of it. When you take the emotion out, oftentimes you will get guidance in either resolving it based on a financial decision or a regulatory decision, or basically what's right or wrong. And then using that to explain to the person or people why you made the decision that way. Goes also back to what I talked about earlier of who are the stakeholders of this conflict we're trying to resolve, and are they in the room when we're discussing this? And going back and building and understanding how those stakeholders feel, making sure they're comfortable to speak the truth or how maybe they felt about the situation by engaging them in that crucial conversation. And I've had experience in this in workplace situations among people I've managed or people I've had to work with, or even people senior to me, where we had to have the conversation where I had the conflict. So I think it's a good method, and I think it would work well in this environment.
Yeah, I think, it's something that we're actually talking about in our classes in advisory in middle school and currently, and I'll point to the wheel that's in German back there that translates to loosely the wheel of choices. And when you have conflict, what are you choosing to use as a tool? And I think that again is a modeling situation for us as adults to also, show our students and kids, what are we trying to accomplish here? Because at the end of the day, most of the conflicts that the board is faced with are things that people are still on both sides wanting what's best for the school. It's just in a different way. And I think taking that, you need to, again, know all of the information that's presented and to know that you're making the decision. And, as a board, we very rarely come into too much conflict with each other, but understanding that once the decision is made, again, using that voice of one, because that's how we operate, is something that we have to go forward with and then support and understand that the decision is not something that's personal and we're trying to, cause damage between our relationships with each other, but understand that we are just trying to figure out the best path to move forward in. And, there are just all sorts of things that were running through my mind as I was thinking about conflict resolution. And I think the biggest thing is to stop and to think about what we're trying to accomplish. And then again, like both have been saying, is to listen and to understand our stakeholders being heard. And, with all of the information that we do have, making that best choice, how are we then communicating it out and saying, as far as conflict resolution, we understand there was this issue, and yet with the information that we can share, this is how we're coming to that conclusion. And, again, understanding that it's not personal most if not all of the time.
Well, we're coming to our last question and then we'll open it up for closing remarks. Starting with you, Abner, how is your leadership experience connected to the school's mission, vision, values, and goals?
My experience in leading people that involve global teams, managing customers, solving complex problems where we often have to prioritize between either competing or conflicting requirements, can translate to help in serving as a board member for the school as we come across these type of problems. These problems are going to be very different than I've faced in the past, but I look forward to engaging and bringing some of those best practices that I've learned in my day job to this kind of role.
Emily?
Yeah, so one thing I neglected to mention in my kind of opening remarks about who I am and what I've done professionally and personally is I'm also working on my master's at St. Thomas in leadership and administrative work. And so that is something where I have gained a lot more insight. You know, being a teacher is a leading job as it is, but it's a lot different leading, you know, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds than it is to lead a school or even staff or other, you know, adults. And you know, it comes with a lot of just feeling comfortable in how you speak and how you talk. And I think in terms of the mission, vision, and values, those are things that, you know, we strive to bring into the classroom each day as staff. And as a board member, you know, really rooting ourselves in the mission, vision, and values at every meeting, including now the land acknowledgement, and really trying to keep that in the center as we think of things. And like I mentioned before, my undergrad at Concordia, really the brew has really stuck with me, becoming responsibly engaged in the world. How are we doing that as adults? What have I done to contribute to that in my leadership roles and my experiences? But also how am I then encouraging anyone that I'm working with or for or above? So I think that is just something that kind of stays in view as we go through each kind of meeting and decision.
Lindsay.
So I kind of broke it down by the 3 mission, vision, and values. So for the mission, the innovative education is something I do in my everyday life, in my own job. I'm a chemistry teacher by training, but I have a global education aspect, which don't necessarily go hand in hand in everyone's minds, but I have the passion for all of those things in my background, and I have found a way in my own classroom to bring global learning into chemistry, such as learning about overfishing in the oceans and how that affects the ocean acidification and things like that. So those global issues I bring into chemistry and try to take the silo down from my own content area and realize that that chemistry is a construct in itself, right? And so the whole school should kind of be working together to bring all of the content areas together. My own background in German, I understand the importance of multiple languages. And as far as the vision, the educating multilingual world citizens is literally what I'm studying right now in my PhD. So I'm learning best practices and I'm learning how to engage students and how we can, what is the best way to really do that with students, and what other people are doing around the world to doing this same work. And then in terms of values, the curiosity, kindness, I mean, that's pretty much how I parent. That's how my mom parented me. I remember her saying, just be kind at the end of the day, no matter what they do, just be kind to the person. And I try to pass that along to my own children as well. And then the intercultural engagement, I seek global opportunities for my own students. I travel with students. I just got done with a virtual exchange with Ukraine students, which was really cool for Global Minnesota. So my networking is definitely there in terms of opportunities and for things like that. And so I would love to bring in those things.
All right, I'll ask each candidate to choose a final topic they'd like to address and make any closing remarks that you would like to make. Emily, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been wonderful hearing just the things that have been said tonight, because I think it really brings back the overarching reason that we, run for the board. And being on the board, we get into some of the more nitty gritty, and it's nice to kind of bring it back to some of the things where we're thinking, just like we do in retreats and things like that, of what is the whole kind of operation about. And so and that's been great to hear. I think one of the things that I've mentioned a little bit that I just want to push again is the staff retention, because as a staff member, I think it's important that, we are finding ways with all of the constraints that we do have working against us to ensure that our staff feel like this is their place too. We talked about stakeholder engagement, and, it was mentioned, of course, that staff are involved in that process. And I think when our staff are involved, the way that you can see certain staff members or think of their names as you're listening, they're doing things that are creating a community that is full of fun and exciting ideas, cool field trips, awesome lessons, things like that. They truly care. And I think within that too is the idea that staff have such a fun relationship with each other. And that's something that I've been privy to, and a reason I have stayed as well, as long as I have, because I love coming here and seeing the people that I work with every day. And I think being able to represent them and to just let them know that while I don't speak for them, that I have the perspective of being a staff member here does impact some of the ways that other board members hear things from me or other teacher board members, but also, their voice is heard in a multitude of ways, whether that's through other channels, like staff council, or from the administration, or, office hours that have been hosted before, all of those things, to truly create a place where staff are, feeling appreciated as well, again, with everything that kind of works against us in some ways. And to know that there are, really great opportunities to be made and to be had here. So thank you very much.
Lindsay?
I think my main thing I want to reiterate again is the recovery from COVID. I don't recall much addressing of the fact that we are still in recovery, and we need to keep up the energy of the fact that we are recovering from a really, quite frankly, traumatic events that happened to both teachers and students. Teachers need, I feel like, just as much support of what happened to them as much as the students do as well. So keeping up with being very cognizant of the mental health issues that are definitely going on, not putting it on teachers to be therapists, not putting on administration to, come up with ideas for it, but somehow as a community, if we could kind of come together and try to figure out how we can utilize all of our assets to create a healing environment for our school, for both the students and the teachers. And also just to acknowledge that it happened and that it's okay to still not be in a good place after what happened, and that it's going to take some time. So thank you.
I don't really have an additional topic I wanted to talk about here. I think this was a comprehensive Q&A. You said there was only 7 questions.
Fun time.
But I thought about it, right? I'm running for the school board because, like I mentioned earlier, we've been with the school 10 years. We've seen how it runs, how well it can run. We know what it's capable of. There's been ups and downs as our children went through the different grades. I still believe in the school. And it's not that we have not had our challenges as specifically, but and I want to serve to help continue to make it a better place, not only for my children, but the community at large. So thank you for inviting me and having me here today.
Well, I want to share my gratitude to each of you for your willingness to step up and share your gifts and your talents and your time and your skills And to all the current board members, I share gratitude as well. As a former board member myself, I know it's a heavy lift, but it's such rewarding work. And this really makes a difference in the life of our school, our students, our staff, administration, teachers. So it's a wonderful opportunity to serve. Want to remind everyone to remember to vote. Encourage your friends to vote. And the way you can do that is watching the Roon brief. There will be an email going out and a link in the Roon brief, I believe, with instructions, and then an email that goes out to you that gives you the link to vote. So thank you all for being here tonight, and thanks to all of our audience members and to those watching the video after the event. Thanks so much.
Thank you.